Right, so I have been awarded, which I really thank Artworks Cymru, some seed funding to look at this thing called cultural commissioning. For me, when I discuss this as I go through it, but for me, the most important statement that I will say at this point is actually fit for purpose. That is really important. Just as Francois was saying 2 weeks ago, it is the purpose. And so the work and my exploration into cultural commissioning in Wales, let me be specific here because a lot of this work is about its effect in a Welsh context, shall fit timely into this debate. So just a general question first. Anyone recognise this person or know of that person? Yeah, right? Well, he was born in about 1557. Any takers? Well, he came up with this quote in very old English. No two things can be more equal. His name is Robert Ricordi, and he actually invented the equal sign.
Tenby?
In Tenby, yes, he's a Tenby guy, very well done indeed, absolutely. So what has the equal sign got to do with cultural commissioning? Well, actually, it has everything to do with cultural commissioning, because I think cultural commissioning is about cultural democracy. So there's an interesting statement, and there was no reference to Diane's introduction there. Obviously, Francois has made an impact in Wales, there you go. So then, as part of the context, cultural commissioning has been piloted in England and has been sort of led by the New Economics Foundation. And part of their work is really talking about people. They've done some work looking at some themes around co-production, and that is really about talking with people. So the analogy that they give is about, if you go to a doctor's, for example, it's not about being either side of the desk. It's actually being on the same side as the GP. It's talking with the doctor, having a conversation, and really it's about being visceral in your conversation. Yeah. The next part of my exploration is about the 5 ways to well-being, and I'm sure a number of people in the audience will know about that. It is about connecting, being active, taking notice, keep learning and giving. What is timely in Wales, that has an inference to the Wellbeing of Future Generations Act, which is quite key to the work in Wales, and so cultural commissioning can be a tool to enable that. Finally, in England, the New Economics Foundation did some pilots in Kent and Gloucester. Anybody aware of the work of cultural commissioning in Kent or Gloucester? Just hands up, anybody? One person, okay, that's all right. 2, fantastic. And a lot of that work is really looking at the use of an art intervention in the health sector. So, the Seed Fund, what was it all about? I've got to be quick here because I want to show you a quick video. It was about developing skills and capacity to engage in cultural commissioning. It was about public service outcomes. It was about strengthening relationships between culture and commissioners. And it was influencing policy through practice. I'm going to whiz through it because I think we need to see some singing. The areas of focus that I considered were looking at mental health and well-being and what effect that can have in terms of actually being more active with the art sector. It's looking at older people and their engagement in the sector, and finally place-based commissioning, what it means to be in a place that makes sense to people and that people can get involved and that people can feel active and engaged in a real, visceral, exciting kind of way. So, then I developed the Wellbeing for Generations Act in response to the New Economics Foundation, so 5 ways to well-being. And if you notice, some of them are very resonant in terms of what happens. So we look at prosperous Wales, it's about feeling inspired. We look at a resilient Wales, it's that glass is half full rather than half empty. It's looking at a healthier Wales and looking what it means to be involved in the art sector, to engage fully and have a health benefit from that. So partners, we had 5 or 6 partners. We worked with Cardiff Met University and their Centre for Applied Research in Inclusive Art Practice and Design, CARIAD. What is important is the inclusive and the art part. It's about together in the same room. We've had conversations with Voluntary Art Wales, the co-production network in Wales. So there's a current co-production network looking at health and social services. The local CVCs, the Council of Voluntary Centres, community artists, and finally, it's people, stupid. To take an analogy from economics, it is actually about the people in those organisations and the service users, the people that are engaging with those services. Then part of the seed fund was looking at bringing all those people into the same room. So on a very cloudy and sunny day, we had a dementia working group and a stroke working group. So we had some occupational therapists, some nurses, some doctors, some community artists, a carer and some service users in the same room. And really we've come to sort of general conclusions in terms of recommendations, but the important points to make really are, when we design and creative responses, it's about doing it together. It's actually being in the same room with the participants. It's brokering public service boards in your area. Now in Wales, we have public service boards that link to the Wellbeing and Future Generations Act. And in fact, there are some key measures against those public service boards. And it's about the art sector getting round the table with those people, because actually we are the people that can provide the answers in what the WFG Act needs to do. It's about understanding the language of non-art organisations, because by understanding that language you can inform, excite and actually reinforce the benefit of what an arts intervention can do. Collaboration can be uncomfortable at the start. Remind each other of the values. That's really important. We feel uncomfortable when we go into non-art organisations. But the point is that the best art can be created when you collaborate with something you feel uncomfortable with. Learn fast and learn often. It is about learning, always. But then it's about recognising and being honest about that learning and recognising the failures, because ultimately the failure is also about learning. And then first change climate, then change culture. So the difference, what we found is that climate is about the processes in maybe a non-art organisation, how they function every day. And obviously the culture is a more longer term thing. It's about the values and the authenticity of a large organisation. What I have definitely identified in the Seed Fund is actually, it's about changing the climate first. Because if you change the climate that fit around that, you actually can produce cultural change and people will buy in to the art sector. Finally, again, I re-emphasise this. It needs to be fit for purpose. Without a sense of authenticity around that, the work that we do won't have its benefit. And in fact, what the Seed Fund has actually also identified is how important it is to have that honesty in those conversations. Because with that honesty, you get fantastically exciting, participatory, life-defining moments. So what I'm going to share with you, I did some pilot projects around 3 years ago with Head for Arts, and then we developed that into a broader choir. Rather than me talking, I would like you to now listen to a YouTube clip that we got. Hopefully, with a bit of tech development here, we're going to try and make this work, but bear with me for 2 minutes and you can have a listen to this.
Give it a go.
This is my father, Will. I'm Susan. We're members of Strike Choir, which is held around once a week on a Thursday. Each week we look forward to getting together, getting involved with the other members of the choir. They are our friends now, and my father interacts. What we all do is a friendly group. So uplifting. Part of my role is to work with the Striker Chord Choir to help run and coordinate. The choir came about as a pilot for the first choir here in Wales in June 2014 in partnership with Heads for Arts. isolated in society since being in this choir, and that their speech has improved since being in this choir. So it's only good that comes out of this every single week.
Makes me feel very wanted in social circumstances. It's nice being with like-minded people, people in similar situations to myself. We look out for each other, and we help each other along on the way.
The choir members have been involved in shaping the choir since day one. They help to choose the songs that they sing each week. This can be from rock to hymns.
It makes people feel less isolated. I think that's very, very important.
People like Ivor and Gwyn, after time they can't talk, they can sing.
Now and then I can't get my words out, but the more you sing, the better it is. And, what else? Everything. It's me that's the choir. I love it.
Thank you all very much. That's what it's about. Thank you.
Our second Seed Fund project is the Making Music Changing Lives Practice Exchange with James Brookmyre and Ceri Tippetts. Thank you.
The switch over that you need. Do you want the...
Yeah, would that be okay?
Yeah.
James, just delivering something.
Just delivering something.
It's the speakers round the back. I'll find it.
Just start talking about charity before.
Why don't you start talking and then I'll chip in.
All right, fine. Yeah, that's fine. Hello, everyone. Thank you for just setting up a little bit. So I'm going to start talking about making music changing lives. So I'm the administrator for Making Music Changing Lives. We're a charity based in Ely in Cardiff. Now, when this charity started in 2009, the ambition was, which still is, to provide free free classical music tuition to children from who might not otherwise have access to this opportunity. So now we work in Ely and Cairo in Cardiff, and now also in Pentrabane, another ward in Cardiff. This started in 2009, and it was founded by a vicar who lived in the area after she saw the Gustav Dudamel Youth Orchestra performing at the Proms on television. And for those of you who don't know, that orchestra was started from a system called El Sistema in Venezuela. This is a very rigorous musical training for young people, and the idea is that they develop in such a way that eventually they'll become professional musicians. Now, the children who are involved in El Sistema in Venezuela. When it first started, they were what was known as street children, lots of children who unfortunately were homeless or unfortunately addicted to drugs, etc. And so he took these children, gave them an instrument to play and taught them every single day, and then eventually these children became professional musicians. And the first ever graduate of the El Sistema program in Venezuela is now principal viola of the Berlin Philharmonic Orchestra. So I'm talking a lot about El Sistema actually, but this is where the idea came from to start this charity in Ely. And so what we do now, we run sessions in Ely at the church hall each week, and we give over about 40 children an instrument which they can take home, they can practice on. It's theirs for as long as they're with us, and they have their instrumental lessons. And now we've also branched out into preschool education as well. So we're hoping to start that bug quite early on. So Ceri.
Hi, I'm Ceri Tippetts. I'm from the Royal Welsh College of Music and Drama, and the collaboration came about between myself and MMCL in Ely after I attended a HE artwork session, and I saw a observing practice framework that Milena and Natasha at UWIC had compiled to give to students and people new to practice, to help them highlight what good practice in what they were seeing. And I thought that there was application for this in a sort of wider context. So James, very nicely, whilst I was loading up my office computer from work, brought round a few bits of paper for you. I'm afraid there's only 2 per table, because otherwise I'd have rinsed my photocopying budget for the rest of the year, and Welsh College would have been like, why haven't you got any money left? The framework is the loose little bit of paper. So the money that we were given for the seed funding was to translate the observing practice framework into a music setting, because it was written for a ceramics setting initially, and some of it didn't really apply to the musicianship that we were seeing in the in teaching, sort of one-to-one teaching. So first of all, we translated this. Then we set about working with the teachers at MMCL and working with students in the final year of the undergraduate course and the final year of the postgrad course at RWCMD, and they came and did a practice exchange at MMCL. They used the framework as a guidance to seeing what was good practice, or asking themselves what they were seeing was good practice, or whether they needed to develop in any areas because what they were outputting was not good practice. And the little book document gave them reflective tools, because we were trying to make our students more reflective practitioners, so that they understand why they're doing what they're doing. And that really is the key element about this project. Right. Here's a little video to explain to you what we found out.
Before, I kind of was doing things just because that's the way I did it. And I think subconsciously there was obviously reasoning behind that, but just bringing that to the surface and me being consciously aware of what I'm doing and why I'm doing it makes me feel like I've got a lot more control, I suppose. And it makes me feel like I have more of an understanding then of what we're doing and why we're doing it. And like I said before, it's easy then to convey that to the children, and I think that helps them massively then with their learning. I think before I would just accept things. If things didn't go on, I just accepted it. And that was okay, things don't always go on. But now I see what's gone wrong, and I'll try to change it. And the thing that I found the most useful was the table, just because of mainly because of the layout of it. So I think for me it was just a really quick and easy way to sort of check through all the points pedagogically and understand myself a lot more as well, and that in turn has then just meant that things are a lot more productive in my classes and my lessons, because it's clear for me, it's bound to make it clear for them.
Thank you very much. To summarise some of those points from that video, I'd just like to say that thank you to Artworks, because without the support that we've been given to do this project, we really wouldn't have progressed as quickly with what these teachers have been saying, and the student participant as well. It really did. We feel that it gave the teachers such an incredible focus, because it enabled, what it did for them was that it made sure that their teaching practice and their reflective practice was constantly at the fore of their mind when they were teaching. They weren't just teaching and going in because that's what they do every week. They were constantly aware of their responsibilities, and also for the children too. Another objective that we had when making this proposal was that we wanted to create a really good, strong link with the Royal Welsh College of Music and Drama. We've always had a relationship with the college, but it was in a more relaxed capacity. We really do feel now that we've created a really solid foundation, and we know that we will build upon that. It's been massively helpful for us. Leading on from that, actually quite seamlessly, what it's also given us is a really committed nucleus of volunteers. We really rely on volunteer support quite heavily, and the volunteers that we have now, they're absolutely fantastic, but it wouldn't have happened if it weren't for this. So yeah, that's been fantastic. Thank you.
There's just a couple of things from Welsh College's side, really, and we feel that everybody on the project is taking a much clearer step forward to understanding why they're interacting with people, the way that they're interacting with them. Quite a lot of the findings have already been implemented. I think I wrote down on the piece of paper, so David said to us, what's changed in the last 12 months? So, what's changed in the last 12 months is people at work have started listening to what I say and doing it. It's really frightening, because they're like, so, we've got to do what you said, so you need to do it. So I was just like, okay. So now, off the back of this project, I now have to make sure all of the second year undergraduate music cohort do that. They've all gone out into schools in the last month, apart from the vocal department that are going next term, and they have to produce a reflective document using the tools that you see on the table in front of you, reflecting on the experience they had and deducing some learning from it. So that's brilliant too. I am after some little help, however. What we have noticed, there are two little areas that people tend to differ with. Some people on the framework go for the questions. They love the questions, they think the questions are great. Some people on the framework will only go to the key points and they won't ask themselves the questions. So what I'm after is a way to tie the two things together so that people take the whole thing as a cycle. I'm also after your help with the last box. My music students don't see teaching or teaching practice as part of their musicianship. They see it as something else. They don't know what, they can't tell me, but they don't see the thing as an entirely built-in part of their practice. And that last box is trying to point in that direction. If you have an idea of how I can help them see that, please come and find me or send me an email, because that's the thing I'd like to tie in. So yes, and the last thing I have left is that I am now developing pedagogical practices, because they had me as a mentor, and a lot of people said it was really nice to come and chat to somebody else and chat through their reflections, and that was great, but I can't be a mentor to 80 students. So, I'm trying, but it's not going very well. I've got a ton of emails and I put my phone down somewhere and I can't reply to the rest of them. So that's where I'm at now. So we're making more reflective practices. Thank you. It's longer than 8 minutes. I'm really sorry.
So next up, we'd like to invite Nicolas Clements, who'll be talking about embedding a creative approach to care plans.
See if we can boot him off again.
Is it all right there? It is. It's all right. No,
There you go. It'll be fine. It just needs to take a while to boot up.
Sorry.
Nick, we've just got to reboot the computer. 2 seconds.
I'm completely functionless. You know, without the computer, I can't remember anything that I wrote down. It's only when it's on the computer that I remember it. So we were asked to do some continuation of the work that we were already started in the Newport area, and what that work was leading towards working just with management and staff rather than service users. So this idea that almost all of my life has been spent working with service users and getting not very far, and actually almost invariably coming across staff and management who disagreed with what was going on or completely ignored what was going on and those kind of things. So what we came up with is this idea to just work with management and staff and see what happened. And really within the context of the health setting, there are two magnificent systems which are clashing. One is this old-fashioned system which is based on the idea that the professionals know the answer. The professionals are professional and they know the professional answer. And the other system which is starting to emerge into view is the idea that actually we need to listen to the service users. We need to actually listen to what they're saying and try to fit to what they want rather than what is needed. So there's a really interesting new process which is happening all in every institution, not just within day centres. And so what we were doing was working to encourage the staff and management to be so inspired by creativity that they would then start working in that way with their clients, with their service users. So what we're trying to do is to get them involved in a way that kind of went home, that came home with them. So I'm racing on. Next slide shows the 3-day program. We run a 3-day program, which is explained in this fantastic book available from Value About. He said ominously, basically we exposed managers and staff to creativity. And I've told this story already this morning. One of the management women went home, and when she got home, she complained to her husband that her face ached. And she couldn't work out why. And then he said, "It's because you've been laughing all day." And it was. Her face ached because she laughed all day. And that was shocking for her. Do you know what I mean? It was because she suddenly went, what am I doing all day? What is my work about? What is my practice about if it's not about laughing and have a good time? And it was really interesting because they took it home and they worked with their children. They took it home and worked with their partners. And then they suddenly went, flipping out, this is actually really interesting. Creativity is really simple and exciting and beneficial to well-being. You know, and this is the connection that we were working on, was the connection between the service, the well-being of the management and staff and the service users, and the connection between the two. You know, that actually, if you as a member of staff are having a good time, more than likely your service user is as well. Shock horror, how terrifying, how, you know, revolutionary concept. So yeah,
Have you got your memory stick?
not on me.
Not on you.
It's all right. I know what I'm doing. It's on the little bar. So basically, having exposed them for 3 days to creativity, we then let them loose back in the day centre. So they went back into the day centre, and what we realised is this short-termism of creativity. You know, they get fired up. I become like Jesus, you know, and they kind of become my disciples. And then after about 2 weeks back on the range, you know, they're knackered. You know, they're back in that kind of role model. So what we realised was that we needed to continue the process. We needed to continue the process. And what we did was they had team meetings, and I'd turn up at the team meetings and we'd do creativity as part of the team meetings. So they'd do drawings, group signatures, they draw each other. You know, the technique which we use a lot is you draw each other. So you, but you don't look at the paper. You only look at each other. And it's beautiful, wonderful pieces that would come up. And what we realised was that we started to have a group of people who were really supportive of the idea of bringing creativity into the day centre. And what happened was that they then set up their own support group. And this is really interesting. This has never happened before. So there's a support group within the management and staff for people who want to use creativity and approach it in a person-centred way. And suddenly that is being taken seriously. You know, a lot of the discussions we're talking, you know, about how we've spent all our lives wanting to be taken seriously. Please take me seriously. I'm a, you know, very important person. Take me seriously. Come on. And what I realised was that it's not about taking me seriously. It's about taking themselves seriously. And by mutually supporting each other in this, and from the team meetings, we then had person-centred and creative support group, champions group, which happened every month and continues to happen. And what I did then was I did one last thing. So we, you know, because I so love working with service users, and I said, okay, I'm going to do a morning session. And we went in and we did a morning session. And they, you know, as you can see from the photos, they all sit on individual tables like you lot are. You know, they all sit on individual tables when the canteen's available, and they just sit there. And what I said to them was, please put the tables to the side. The staff freaked out. It was more than their jobs were. To what? Move the tables to the side, and have a circle of all of us. And it took them about 15 minutes because they were so pissed off with doing, you know, this outrageous act of revolution. And then we got them in the circle, and we just passed objects around the circle. And a woman, I just chose this woman, Phyllis, and I just said, just start passing the things around, love. And all the staff going, no, don't. Whatever you do, don't involve her, because she can't speak. You know, she won't be able to communicate. Within 15 minutes, she's going, eat or, making animal noises. The staff are crying because they haven't seen her speak or do anything. And we've done 15, 20 minutes work. And I'm saying to them, do spontaneous acts. Nobody knew it was going to happen. So the support group, the champions group, have now set up this program of spontaneous events. So it just happens. And it freaks everybody out, you know, because there's no rhyme or reason. I was there and they did a sing-song. And I was talking about this morning, they were singing Beatles songs. They got them all into a circle to sing Beatles songs. And the one woman, she's brilliant, she likes licking my head. Because she likes bald heads. And she was, you know, everybody's singing Yellow Submarine, and she's the pub singer. There's this tune going in her head, and the staff are going, stop her, you know, we're singing Yellow Submarine. I'm going, stop her? That's an impossible, you know, what are you talking about? Let her sing. You know, the staff are saying, right, it's time for a cup of tea now. You know, it's time for a cup of tea. The service users, not one moved. And they all started. They'd all been waiting for giving the opportunity to join her. Because she was leading. She was leading, not us. Do you see it? And we're trying to suppress them at all times and saying, no. For half an hour they carried on. Riots happening, you know. Outrageous. God, blimey. So there's this idea that really what we were doing was just giving them the opportunity to be heard. You know, we've talked about this in the groups and stuff, just to be heard. I guess what we're getting to is congruence. You know, what we're saying here is I want the staff to be congruent. You know, what I'm giving them through being creative, they're being congruent. And that means they're acting out of honesty, engagement, and embracing their humanity. You know, that's an interesting word, isn't it? My humanity. And the congruence leads to having fun. Making a fool of yourself and having fun. As you can see from the photos, you know, what we then kind of did was kind of the really revolutionary piece, which I have here as a piece of paper. And what happened was that the champions said, okay, let's apply this to a service delivery plan. Let's apply creativity to a service delivery plan for our clients, which is revolution. And here it is. Creativity, the first thing. Creativity changing lives, physical well-being, multimedia advocacy. This is the care plan and delivery service that they are now giving to their individual service users. And basically what they're saying, the outcomes of using creativity, this is their stuff. I haven't written any of this. This is being produced by the staff. Creativity creates self-exploration, communication, establishes identity as an individual, confidence building, reward, task and finish focus, pride and personal journey, concentration techniques, forms of expression, sensory experience. Those are what they're looking for. Those are the indicators they're trying to see within their service users and to identify progress, to identify change through those particular means. Yeah? And in the meantime, I just turn up and have fun. But you know, that's part of the process, hugely important part of the process. I wanted to just say it was a risk. All of the stuff is a risk. You know, there's high risk in this. This is high risk stuff because some of the staff told us to off, you know, and still do. You know, some of the staff are still not convinced. It's a long-term process. So I wanted to finish just taking this idea of a disruptive innovation. Have anybody heard of disruptive innovation? I fell off my seat when I suddenly found myself. This for 40 years, I've been waiting to be given a name. I'm a disruptive innovator. I'm not a community artist. I'm a disruptive innovator. It's just brilliant. Greenpeace employed a woman to be a disruptive innovator because they've become so hierarchical and they wanted to return to being a grassroots organisation. So they employed a disruptive innovator to come in and revert the organisation. Do you get it? I want that job. I want that job so much. And so, you know, the disruptive innovator describes a radical change within an organisation which affects all levels of structure and practice. The agent for such change has to come from outside the institution. The change has to be adopted and embraced by the staff, who then claim ownership. The benefits of the change outweighs the benefits of the status quo. Ah! That is brilliant. Thank you.
I will get Nick's presentation and we will put all the presentations on the Artworks Cymru website, so you will get a chance to have a look at his wonderful, I can tell you, presentation.
Right, our next person up is Kathryn Williams with What is Participatory Practice?
Kathryn, can you bring your ninja with you? Yeah, that's a real thing, honestly. It's the best memory stick I've ever seen.
It's fantastic.
In the shape of a ninja. Sorry. It's just so good. Are you alright? Yeah. Sort it out now. Which one is it? Oh, it's down the bottom, isn't it? Just right down the bottom. There we go. What is participatory? Let's go. We're on.
I'm Kathryn Williams and I'm from Rubicon. And I'm going to tell you a little bit about this project that we did earlier this year with Cardiff Met. The project was called Conversations. What we wanted to do was to explore what participatory practice meant to people doing it. Our approach was to work with a number of artists and see what we could find. I think it was quite a risky project in a way, because at the outset we were not prescriptive in terms of what the outcomes were going to be. So what I'm going to do is just give you a flavour of this incredibly rich data set that we have uncovered, and just some thoughts about where we might take this research next. Okay. Okay, so our approach was we created a call out and we invited 6 artists who were involved in participatory practice to come and tell us their story in terms of participation and their practice. And we also invited them to come with a provocation about participatory work. We also called out to the wider participatory arts community to actually engage in this conversation with the artists. And it was particularly interesting for me as to who identified themselves as an artist and who just wanted to join in the conversation. And I think it has also informed about us in terms of our future thinking about how we might structure a similar conversation. We simply asked people to tell us their story. We weren't prescriptive in terms of how this would be, other than that they had half a day to get it over to us and our co-contributors. It was very, very open. And I need to say a little bit about the scope of the project, because we were not making any judgment about the quality of the work that the artists were presenting, nor were we making any judgment about whether their practice reflected the story that they were giving to us. So just to be really, really clear about that. So who was involved with the project? So from an artist point of view, we had a variety of people who have a variety of different participatory practices. So we have Jem, Jessie, Ceri, Joe Fong, Stevie Picket and Kathryn Young. But also a really, really important part of the project were those people who were engaged in the dialogue. So that included people also involved in participatory practice, undergraduates, facilitators, all sorts of people. And out of this, as I said, we got a really, really rich set of data. So what I'm going to do now is just give you an overview of, or a flavour really, of the individual conversations that we had. And you'll see, I think, that participatory practice means different things to different people involved in something that we all could recognise in one way or another as participatory. Jem's conversation was particularly interesting to me because he came with a really interesting provocation. What do we need to do as artists to compete with immersive experiences such as the Xbox? For him, participatory practice was about doing, being, watching, being actually involved and being immersed in the practice. Jessie Brett had a different take on practice. For her, it was a way of working out how to make sense of the contributors' world. She gave an example of a project that she had been working on in Ethiopia with women to empower them, and also a project where she had worked with offenders. And for her, the transformational part of the participatory practice was in the act of actually contributing and contributing together. For her, she had a real concern, and this was her provocation in a way to us, is what do we do once the project has finished? What is our responsibility to those participants? Because for her, the work was very much about having a purpose, and that purpose was not just an artistic purpose, but what we might call a broader sort of social purpose. Cyril Joyner's conversation was one that resonated the most for me personally. Cyril's approach was very much about creating a space in which collaboration and creativity could occur, and negotiating that space with whoever the contributors and participants were going to be. She gave an example of a project that she had worked on in Edinburgh with people who were partially sighted, that was site-specific. The project had run twice, and on both occasions, within the framework, the participants got quite different experiences. And for her, it was a little bit about having courage to take the risk and to pass over the ownership for creation to the participants. Her provocation, actually, for me, was very significant. She was asked by one of the people involved in the dialogue what participatory dance, in this case, meant to her. And her answer was that all dance is participatory, which I found a really fascinating insight and something I return to quite often. So that's whether we are artists or participants or choreographers, the act of creation is all participatory. Jo Fong's concern was about choreography and how, as a choreographer and artist, she communicates with her audience. And she also drew quite a bit on her work, The Invitation, and again the degree of risk that is involved with allowing an element of audience participation, but how much more rich the outcome is. Jo was also concerned about participation as a vehicle for social comment. And it was at the time, actually, when the Cardiff Without Culture demonstration was about to take place. And Jo urged us all to dance our protest, our feelings of protest. And she illustrated this with a piece of work that had come from Spain, which was a comment on the banking crisis, where flamenco dancers actually invaded a banking hall and flash mob style made their protest quite clear. It's very much a shared process and is an exchange, and in that exchange that's where the power comes with the participants. For Stevie Picket, participation was about co-production. It was about the audience very, very much being part of the creative process. And he gave an example of a piece that he created in a seed factory in Norfolk. And this was about creating a sense of shared cultural value within the organisation and sharing a significant anniversary. And it was about finding the artists within the audience. So uncovering those people who play the violin, uncovering those people who were prepared to sing and to dance, and creating a piece that was meaningful and told the story of that organisation. Finally, Kathryn Young came and told us her story. And for Kathryn, it was very much about finding a process to enable participation, and in that finding a language that she could use to work with people that the people who had not perhaps danced before, that they could recognise and that they felt comfortable with. She illustrated this by showing a piece that she created using her process. That was a solo that had previously been shown at the Eisteddfod, and she demonstrated how her process that she had been researching and discovering was used to build this particular piece. Okay, so some of the things that we discovered as part of the conversations process. Well, we discovered that we have got some extremely rich data. We have about 20 hours of recordings giving us the artists' reflections on their take on participatory practice. We also have pages and pages of reflections from the people who were involved in that dialogue and shaped that dialogue. We had hoped to identify common themes, and I think between all of the conversations, what did come through is that this notion of relationship was central to creating a collaborative participatory experience. We also realised that at the moment we're just scratching the surface in terms of the research. But one interesting piece of feedback that we had from each of the conversation leaders is that they all appreciated having the time and space to reflect on their own practice. And we wonder if this is a direction that we might take further research in. I think we were also extremely aware towards the end of the conversation process that we had been looking at it entirely through the lens of an artist. And I think a next step might be to look at it from a participant's perspective, whether this would be possible to have conversations with participants about their experience of participatory practice. And really, what we would like to do is to mine the data set that we have, because it is so rich and there are so many different directions that it could go. But certainly the notion of supporting artists to reflect on their practice was not what we had expected to come out of the research, but was a clear theme alongside this notion that for participation to take place, there needs to be a relationship of trust between the artist and the participatory community, however that relationship of trust is established. So that's it. Thank you to Artworks for funding our project, and watch this space as we develop more output from the data set. Thank you.
So next presenter is Kate Broadhurst with Outside the Box.
Hello. Okay. So I will be quick because I'm sure everybody is really looking forward to lunch. This project is one that is based in a telephone box, which you can't quite see it because of the lighting, but this is a really great old photograph that we got from the museum in Ponty. And the project is to repurpose the box and turn it into a really innovative, interactive piece of public art, but also as a way to use the project to test how arts and non-arts organisations can work together in partnership It's a project that's been quite a long time in the making, I believe, before even I was an artist, so I can't claim to have any credit for it, but it's a really exciting project and a really fantastic idea, and one that I'm really pleased to be a part of. Can I just do that? Yes. So for those of you who don't know who Artist Community are, we are a community arts organisation based in Ponty and work throughout the South Wales valleys. We do participatory arts that is kind of rooted in social outcomes, so all about using arts as a way to make a real difference to people's quality of life. And one of the other things that we are working on is developing a network of strategic partnerships with arts and non-arts organisations, so working across different sectors to create an environment of mutual support and shared capacity, shared expertise across sectors. And this project is one of the ways that we're trying to explore how that might work in a practical sense, how those partnerships might come together. So this is the museum, and you see the phone box just outside. The initial conversations came from talking to the museum about them wanting to adopt the telephone box and what we might be able to do within it. So thinking about the way in which technology has changed how we transmit and receive messages, and how we could maybe turn the phone box into something that is interactive and gives it a purpose within the community once again. So it's something that at the moment is quite overlooked. People just walk past it because it doesn't have a use. So how we can give it a purpose, give it a grounding in the community, and make it something that people can really engage with. Alongside the museum, we've got a number of different partners on board. We've got RCT Youth Engagement and Participation and Glencock Communities Regeneration. We're going to be working with their young people to be able to develop some workshops and get the young people feeding into the project. We've also got the Friends of the Ponty MMCL, who are a group of local older people, really well rooted in the community, and one of the things we want to try and explore is some intergenerational work, so bringing those two groups together and how that might generate some really exciting outcomes. We've got the University of South Wales, a researcher there called Alice Entwistle. She is actually a lecturer in literature and poetry, but she's got a really keen interest in partnership working and how you develop kind of practices and outcomes as a result of that. And so she's really interested in that side of the project. We're also going to be providing some work placements for her students to be able to come and explore how participatory arts kind of comes about, how you develop workshops in the community, so that's really exciting. And then Deaf Pictures is an artist who works with digital and sound installation, creates some really innovative, interactive pieces. So he's going to be the artist who is pulling this all together and creating the piece. I don't think you're going to be able to read this, but I can maybe pass it on to Rian to send around for anyone who's interested. It's a diagram I found in a cultural inquiry report called The Art of Partnering, and it's just highlighting some of the benefits of working in partnership with different organisations. And I think it's something that we're all aware of, that in the current climate there's this need to do more with less, and actually partnering with other organisations who have similar aims is a way of sharing resources, it's a way of developing new ideas with new perspectives, and it's a way of kind of reaching new audiences as well that you may not otherwise have access to. I think it's something that came out a lot in the discussions as we were going around the tables, is that is something that is becoming increasingly important. And yeah, I think that's, to me, is the most exciting part of this project, is actually being able to explore how that might happen and what the challenges are in actually pulling that together, but also what the results are and how actually we might be able to create something stronger as a partnership than any of us would have been able to create on our own. And this is was another line in the report that I read, and it is something that I kind of related to. So even in the early stage of the project that is at the moment, I am coming across certain challenges. Bringing partners together is something that can be quite difficult. It requires quite a lot of facilitation, and it has been, it's been difficult to establish, for example, what different people's roles are within the project. Everybody's coming to it with their own set of priorities, and it's something that, as kind of a coordinator for it, has taken quite a lot of work in just bringing people together and making sure that everybody understands each other's priorities. I think one of the things that has come out of it that's really important if you're going to do this type of work is there has to be a shared vision across the board. So within that, everybody has their own individual agendas and expertise, and that's what makes it great. But kind of overarching that, there has to be a shared vision that binds it all together. I think there's a human dimension to it as well. This is really, it's all about developing working relationships with other people. So one of the things that has happened is that actually just maintaining that communication and making sure that we're sharing that learning with each other and we're keeping things moving forward as we're all going off and doing our other things and are really busy, that in itself has become a role. And I think that's something that maybe for future projects and for any organisations who are looking to develop this type of work, is that actually the amount of administrative work involved with that can be quite big, but it is important. And then, like David mentioned earlier, the language difference. So as arts organisations, we're very used to working and speaking in a particular language that we all get, but that people from other sectors might not understand. So for me, when I first started speaking to Alice from the university, as a researcher, she was very, she's quite direct and she wants kind of a set of rigid outcomes, whereas I was kind of going in and talking about the project in very broad kind of, these are the opportunities that might happen, and our wires got crossed a little bit at the beginning, and so that's something that I think if we want to harness these opportunities is something that we have to try and learn, is actually how we make ourselves relatable to people who are from other sectors and don't have that same background. But that was, that's also kind of a positive, because actually working with Alice has, she's brought a new level of thinking to the project that otherwise wouldn't have been there. So in our partners meetings, she's kind of posing questions and challenging us, and I do think that it's kind of pushed the project in a new direction that otherwise wouldn't have happened without her. So although that is a challenge, it's something that I think is worth working through, if that makes sense. No, you can't read it. I've just, because there are so many other partners involved in the project, there are a lot of potential aims and outcomes, but I've pulled together a few here that I think demonstrate the value that each of them individually is bringing to the project, and that are things that we couldn't have done without them. So the first one around the intergenerational exchange, without the partnership with the youth groups and with the YMCA, that wouldn't be possible. Being able to work with both of those groups together is giving artists access to a much bigger audience base that otherwise we wouldn't have been able to reach. Encouraging arts participation from the public. So the museum is really keen to increase access to culture, to the history of Ponty, and by bringing them together with Dan from Deaf Pictures, he's able to create something really innovative and engaging for them. The Friends of the YMCA as well are, because they have been part of Pontypridd's community for so long, they have been able to kind of establish a sense of ownership of the project within the community. They've been kind of going out and speaking to local shop owners who have been in Pontypridd all their lives, and it's widening the reach of the project because we've got those links. Creating the student placements is one that I think we were always going to do, but partnering with Alice in particular has meant that we're reaching out to non-traditional art students. So we are reaching out to people who are literature students and poetry students who otherwise wouldn't be able to get the opportunity to see participatory art and experience that. So that's something that I think will be of real value. And then the last three, I'll just quickly kind of say, because these are ones that we all share. And it's about being able to use this as a case study. So we want to be able to say, okay, this has been a successful project, but it also demonstrates a successful partnership in action and what the longevity of that would be. So how we look to sustain and develop the project beyond the scope of this initial seed funding, how we can use it as a platform to maybe apply for future funding as a partnership or reach out to other partnerships as a result of the links that we've created. So I think succession planning is a really important part of any kind of partnership project. It's about not just kind of doing one thing and then letting those links slip away. It's trying to kind of keep it as an ongoing, rolling thing. And that's it. And then you can have lunch. Just to say, if anyone's interested in finding out more, those are my details. We'll be kicking off the project in full force in January and looking to complete at the end of February. So after that point, we'll put together a case study that hopefully we'll be able to share with everybody. And that's it. Thank you.
Right, now we have Prue Thimbleby to talk about the artists in hospitals.
And I can't believe I stand between you and lunch. I will do my best. My name is Prue Thimbleby. I'm employed by the NHS in the Swansea Bridge End area to be the arts coordinator there. And thank you, Nick, for your disruptive innovation. When I take artists onto the ward, I say to the staff there, I'm bringing you some disruptive joy. So it's a lovely expression.
Prue, you don't have your memory stick, do you?
I do, I have it in my pocket, yes. I thought you might ask me, I just had that feeling.
Yeah, it's just one of those days.
It's alphabetical and
Perfect.
it's right down the bottom, it's called Toolkit.
Excellent.
So what I want you to do, just whilst Rian sorts the technology out, is just, everybody, could you just shut your eyes for 5 seconds and just think, you're an artist, you're about to go onto this ward, there's lots of equipment around, there's lots of ill people. What do you want to know? You're about to go and deliver some art. Just think for a moment, what's your top request? Please tell me. Okay, just hold on to that. And we had some seed funding in the first year, and we produced an artist toolkit for artists who want to go into hospitals. And I'm hoping that the answer to your question is in here. We spent a year writing it, and it's been online for the last year. My copy is now covered with notes because we've spent the year learning, revising it, reflecting on it, and running some training for artists and using their feedback to help us develop and improve it. So I'll just quickly run through these. By the way, so the URL's on all the slides, but I find I don't remember the URL. Every time I want to find it, I just Google Artworks Hospital Toolkit, and it pops up at the top of Google. That's all you need to know for finding it. These are the chapters. So what I hope you might do is catch me over the rest of the next 2 days and say, Prue, what I wanted to know is this, and I'll be able to keep revising my toolkit and writing notes on it and checking that what everybody wants to know is in there. So we've got things like understanding the NHS in Wales, you know, how do I recognise the different members of staff by what colour uniform they're wearing, and that sort of thing. Clinical infection control, all sorts of stuff on commissioning and participatory work, and at the end a chapter on what healthcare staff might like to know about working with artists. So there's all sorts of stuff in there for you to explore. Hands up who's actually had a look at it online. Anybody? Whoa, I'm so impressed, thank you. Hopefully this will go up, these counts. One of the things we've been doing this year is taking it to places. So the launch of the training had a peak in the number of hits, and in the past week I was speaking at an event last week, and I think that's why we had a peak last week, because we're taking this out to events and promoting it. So, year 2, what have we been doing this year? We wanted to put it into work. We wanted to gather feedback. We wanted to fill in the gaps that we'd become aware of, and we're adding some case studies. We wanted to host 2 training days and use the feedback from those to improve the toolkit. And we wanted to revise what we've done, publish a 2nd edition, and do a Welsh translation. Those were our aims this year. These were we ran 2 training days. They were great, they were absolutely packed, we loved them. We had 3 speakers each day, and lots of interaction and lots of creativity. And I've just got some pictures of this was the first event, and 3 of the Toolkit members from the team who were writing the toolkit ran different sessions, and this was the 2nd one, which was at Arts Alive in Crickhow. The first one was at an Arrynbethyn Health Board. Seem to have gone on to... hopefully it'll stop here for a moment, because I just wanted, as a toolkit group, we've learnt an enormous amount, and Sarah and Prue at the top, we both work within the NHS, and it's been really important for us in terms of being able to deliver a professional development for artists, because as we leverage an increase in commissioning and support from within health, we need to know that there are artists out there who can deliver high quality work to the patients who we're working with. So it's really been important for us for that point of view. Kira was a young artist who worked with us. It was great to have that younger artist new to the working in this sort of environment to keep us on check with what she really needed to know. And Heather, who's here too, who was part of the writing team, I think we all echo what Heather says there, that she found it massively important, and we have developed professional friendships and that has really supported us in our work. And Heather now works in part of my team with me in the health board. So it's leveraged an enormous increase in what we're able to do, sort of within what we're... So what happens next? So the toolkit's been revised. I've got anything people give me can still go into it, because it's waiting to be reset by a graphic designer, and it will also be translated into Welsh. We've submitted it for a presentation at the Bristol conference on culture and well-being for June next year. And we're hoping to do further training events. I'm hoping to plan some in the Swansea area in autumn next year. These are some sort of not spin-offs, but I just wanted to share them with you, because the whole thing is just becoming so exciting. It's like there's a tsunami of support for arts within the health system. So we've just had an inaugural meeting of the first Welsh Government cross-party group on arts in health. So the government are getting behind that and working with the Arts Council on it. We've got a very active Wales Arts and Health Wellbeing Network, and Angela's here at the back. Just wave, Angela. Angela runs a very active email group which now has about 100 members, and that sort of disperses information through email. So do speak to Angela if you want to add your name to that. Last Friday we had the first Arts of Healthcare one-day meeting in Cardiff, and what's exciting about that is that it was initiated from within the health service, and it's probably going to become a 1,000 Lives community of interest group. So really exciting to see the health service actually initiating something. And just jot down that website address because it's a new website. It's artsinhealth.wales, and it's one I'm running as part of my work within ABM, but we've divided it into two so that there's an ABM part, but there's also a part that is available to just showcase what's happening across Wales, and we want to populate that part so that people searching online for arts in health in Wales can find this website and see what everybody's doing here. And that's it. I just want to say thank you to the Toolkit team. These are the 4 people who've been actively working on the training this year, and down at the bottom the other people who wrote and contributed case studies to the Toolkit. I just want to say thank you to all that team, and it's been great, and thank you to Artworks for funding us.